Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said earlier today, if this claim is true, if this is accurate, that 3,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in just 36 hours, that's an enormous number. Now, that's what the Financial Times is reporting. Who knows? But that is an enormous number considering we spent 20 years in Iraq and 4,400 soldiers were killed. And look, that is an enormous number. But in 36 hours, wow. I'm here to share some thoughts on what's going on in Ukraine as the world seems to be, well, where we are. I've asked Rick Wilson to come talk with us. Rick is the co-founder of the Lincoln Project, their website, lincolnproject.us. Rick, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, glad to be with you again.
So I'm looking at this number. That would be an enormous number. 3,000 soldiers killed in just 36 hours.
Yeah, and there's a story breaking right now that the Ukrainians have downed an IL-76 troop transport, which could have had up to 300 more on board. This is not going the way Putin expected. They still may push into Kyiv. They still may win this short term, but they're paying an enormous cost in blood right now, as they should, frankly, for attempting to invade a democratic country. They're engaged in a degree of criminality and cruelty that is almost unprecedented in the modern era. And, if that number is as high as we think it is, there's a point where even Vladimir Putin's iron control over Russia starts to slip. The combination of the sanctions that the Biden administration and the EU nations have been imposing, the military costs in the war, and the fact that the Russian model of battle here hasn't worked out like they thought it would. They believed they were going to sweep in, have a traditional Russian style combined. This is way back to my days of working for the Defense Department. They thought they would send in this massive airstrike, massive artillery fire support, and then a motor rifle division and a tank division into each of these big lines of attack, and that Ukraine would fall. They were mistaken.
No, and you look at some of the stories, and the differences from your days back then till now is everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone is recording war crimes as they're happening.
That's right.
We're seeing real time exactly what's going on. So the propaganda machine not working, although here in this country, our propaganda machine working overtime. And I want to get to some of that. But I guess today also the Russians vetoed a measure at the Security Council. I know nobody's surprised by that, but coming out of the UN Security Council, the fact that China abstained and India stayed out of it, that's a pretty big deal, isn't it?
I think the biggest part of that story, Rick, is that China abstained. That is something that for Russia, they've been really playing hard to get China on board, to get them on side. And if they are not going to back the Russian play here, I think it makes it much more problematic. And I don't think we expected that it was going to turn out that way, but it seemingly has.
And also today, as I understand, for the first time in NATO's history, they have activated the NATO response force, which has never happened before, which I guess shows just how historic this moment is and how dangerous this moment is.
That is correct. And one thing that the president has been abundantly clear about is that we are fully in support of NATO, unlike Trump, who tried to turn NATO into a vending machine where we would put in a certain amount of money and they would then pay for our services. Joe Biden has said that Article 5 of the NATO treaty and the NATO treaty itself and NATO territory is sacrosanct. We are going to 100% defend NATO territory. That doesn't mean we're going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine, because frankly, I think the Ukrainians are doing a stellar job right now. But we're going to make sure that Vladimir Putin doesn't think he can expand back into the Baltics or Poland. You see Finland and Sweden today asking to join NATO. And, NATO is an alliance that in its history has never attacked another country.
Right.
It has stood as a bastion of stability and protection. It works. And I think there's a possibility here, Rick, that this turns out and blows back on Putin by producing a Western Europe that is less corrupted by Russian money and is more allied with a strong NATO.
Which is why I think it was interesting that the Russians came out and said that if Finland or Sweden decides that they want to think about NATO, that things could happen to them as well. And I'm going, can you really want to be fighting that multiple front kind of war in this moment, especially as you pointed out, things aren't going well on the one front.
Right. And I will say this, as a history nerd, the last time the Russians invaded Finland before World War II, the Finns killed about 100,000 of them. They are the most fierce and deadly fighters in Europe by reputation. Do not screw with the Finns. They will leave. They will stack you up like cordwood. And while no one alive today was involved in that, that should be a memory of those of their determination not to be rolled over. I spoke to people today in Germany, in Lithuania, in Poland, and Italy, all folks that I've known in those countries, either in politics or in the defense world, and they are all absolutely unified that this is not going to stand. They're not going to let Europe get rolled over. We're not going to let a new Iron Curtain fall at the hands of Vladimir Putin.
So let's get back to what's going on here, because obviously, sure, we don't have much control over there. But here at home, are you surprised by the right-wing propaganda, by the Putin apologists, by the Fox News, the AONs, and a lot of the people who are falling for the rhetoric that they're throwing out? First and foremost, being that this is all Joe Biden's fault. He's still buying gas from the Russians. He's funding all of this. I'm curious your thought on that.
Yeah, look, these are people who watched Donald Trump for 4 years, actually for 5 years. They watched Donald Trump kiss Vladimir Putin's ass. And there's a reason Putin didn't invade Ukraine when Trump was president. It's not the reason they think. It's not because Trump was strong or unpredictable or any of that other garbage. They didn't invade Ukraine because Trump was giving them what they wanted. He was breaking NATO apart. He had promised to leave the NATO treaty in the second term. He had broken up a deal that would have helped Ukraine protect itself by saying, do me a favor first and conduct a bogus investigation of Joe Biden. All of these things combined should tell you that what we're seeing in Joe Biden right now is a president who is in the tradition of Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, people who got it, where they may have disagreed on all kinds of policy things, but they agreed on the fact that you shouldn't have an authoritarian government that rolls over other countries in Europe. It is. I think the hypocrisy of it on the Republican side right now is astounding, and I think that the strength that Biden is showing right now. And look, could he do some things I want differently? Yeah, sure, a few things, but they are moving swiftly. They are taking strong action. They are doing things that are hurting the Russian oligarch class and Putin directly. And I think that's damn smart politics.
I'm right there with you. But, all day today, all I heard is the Fox News thing is, he's still buying their gas. And you go, yeah, because you don't want $6 gallon gas right now. You strategically hurt them where you can. You cripple them where it's most effective. And then down the road, if you need to go there, you go there as well. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Rick Wilson. He's the co-founder of the Lincoln Project, their website, lincolnproject.us. If you're just joining us, make sure you download the podcast so you never miss a second of the program. Now, what's interesting to me also is, the talk of, there are Nazis everywhere in Ukraine. Obama brought in Nazis. And I'm sitting there going, really? Where's this coming from? You find out it's coming from the cable news folks who are spewing this.
Right.
Are there Obama Nazis in Ukraine?
There are no Nazis in Ukraine. But the ironic thing is, if Republicans discovered there were Nazis in Ukraine, and they'd be kind of conflicted because they would be the only Nazis they don't love. Because right now those guys are a part of their constituency. The extremists and the far right, Proud Boys and the Patriot Front and the Boogaloos and all this other garbage parade. They're now an essential part of the Republican base coalition. They're good people on both sides, but the ironic thing here is this is classic Russian propaganda, and somehow they leave off the one big key fact that the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is Jewish. So somehow they're missing that kind of big point in the thing. But it's just trash propaganda from the Russians and Fox. But I repeat myself.
Yeah. Now you brought up Zelensky, and I got to tell you, I'm in awe of this guy. I mean, he could flee, he could do what they've done in the past, but he has stood up. He said, "Nope, we're going to stay. We're going to fight." Along with the mayor of Kiev, the former boxer Klitschko.
Klitschko, yeah. Klitschko was out there with a big, carrying a big PKM machine gun today, and I'm like, he's still got that upper body strength. He can rock that.
No, but this is one of those things where you go, these are people who you don't want to mess around with, and there's part of me that doesn't doubt that first number. But now I'm looking at some of the people, the spokespeople here. First, you had Tommy Tuberville come out yesterday, whatever the hell statement that was, and now you got Charlie Weiss, another college football coach, coming out with another stupid statement about socialism. How is it that these guys spend so many years in and around colleges and know so little about what's going on and what the terms mean?
There is a joke today earlier that calling Tommy Tuberville stupid is an insult to stupid people. That is a guy who, I mean, it's either the most tenditious BS of somebody who absolutely knows he's lying, or somebody who is that dumb.
I'm going that dumb.
I gotta say it's probably that dumb.
Yeah. I'm going that dumb. And that's a sad thing, because this is someone sitting in the U.S. Senate. This is someone who is obstructing and pointing the finger at the president in a position of some authority. And that's what's most frustrating to me, Rick. You look at these people that are supposed to be our representatives, our quote unquote leaders, and how divided in this moment. And you're probably right about my age, maybe a little bit older. I grew up during the Cold War. I could have never imagined in this moment that you would hear people on television saying, I have more in common with Vladimir Putin than I have with the president of the United States. I can't imagine having a governor saying, hey, I backed a white supremacist instead of a Democrat. We're just in such weird times.
It really is. We've reached the point where the irreality of our situation has been brought home, I think, in a strange way, in a very odd way, by a war, where we have had a sudden moment of clarity that for a lot of Republicans who do not side with Putin, they're watching leaders in their party, and they're watching the network that defines their party praise a post-communist ex-KGB officer who is the dictator of Russia invading a peaceful, democratic, pro-American nation. And they're supporting it. And so I think this is going to end up having two big consequences. There will be a further erosion inside the GOP of people who are comfortable with the Trumpist version of pro-Putinism and pro-authoritarianism. There will also be, I think, a moment where Joe Biden, there's a way for Joe Biden where he comes out of this thing looking like a strong international leader. And if that ends up being the case, we could see a very different sort of political landscape. Because look, what is the fundamental underpinning of all Republican argumentation about national security? We're the tough guys.
Yep.
We're the badasses. We're strong. Democrats are weak. Well, right now they are the weak side. They are the side that is siding with the Putin regime, and siding with the invasion, and laughing it off and shrugging it off and saying, oh, it's not as bad as anything that, and they are truly not, I think, in a position where they understand just how bad this is for them, both as politically and as a party.
So let me ask you this then, because there's part of me that goes, we've become such a society that whatever the other team is for, we have to be against. Do you think that plays into this, or as I believe, I actually truly believe this is who the Republicans are? They are the party of white supremacy. They are the party of Christian nationalism and all of the things that the homophobia and misogyny and all of those things. But there's part of me that goes, some of it is the other team's for something, I got to be against it, and the reflux is immediate. I have to be against it.
It is, and the reflexive oppositional defiant disorder is most strongly marked inside the GOP today. Where Joe Biden could come out tomorrow and say, "Hey, by the way, we've discovered a cure for cancer," and Republicans would say either, "No, you haven't, it's a lie," or "We're not taking your evil anti-cancer medicine because of something."
Yeah.
That reflexive, middle finger extension on anything, I think it's a danger to the country. I think it's a danger to the fabric of this nation in a fundamental way. And look, Democrats, especially a lot of progressives, God bless them, they have the same kind of reflexive thing.
Yep.
where they have they can't accept even a statement of goodwill. I mean, I saw Mitt Romney getting blasted yesterday saying, we got to stand up against Russia for Ukraine, and people were mad at him on the progressives. I'm like, for God's sakes, he's on the side of the angels right now. It doesn't have to be perfect. You guys aren't getting married. It's like staying at an Airbnb. You need to stay there for a little while. You don't need to move in or get married. So.
No, but here's the thing, and this is where the interesting part of it is. To your point, you were a former Republican,
Yep.
a Reagan guy, I'm sure. How did that party go from the party of
Reagan's 84 election was my first vote I ever cast.
Yeah, how do you go from Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall to the leader of Russia as a genius and savvy? How does that happen in my lifetime?
That's why I'm not a Republican anymore. The party abandoned everything it allegedly meant. And the irony of this whole thing was there are very few of us who, I mean, look, I've been opposed to Trump now, and I feel so old saying this, for 7 years. I came out against Trump in 2015, which I feel like it's dog years. I feel like that's like 100 years ago. But so few of the Republicans that I was friends with for years and worked with and elected and helped and friends and clients and everything else, colleagues, they have to close their eyes and pretend that it's normal and pretend that nothing's changed, or pretend that Trump was a 5-minute aberration and the rest of the world could go back to normal now. It's not. The whole party changed. Everything changed. They stopped believing in anything. Whether you believed in limited government or free markets or individual liberty or the Constitution, or I was never a social conservative, but if you believe in any of the social conservative stuff, all of that's out the window now. It's all about power, control, and the retention of power and control, and basically a willingness to burn down anything that gets in the way of Trump's lies.
Yeah, I mean, well, you've gone from Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall to at CPAC, Trump people handing out Russian flags with Trump's name on it.
Yeah.
How do you get there? And
yeah,
is there hope?
It's impossible to imagine.
I guess the last question I've got, looking at what's going on down at CPAC, which is just turned into complete and total crazy pack. Is there any hope for that party? Is there any hope? Because look, I've got people that I know who vote for Republicans, and I've always thought of them as
Sure.
good, decent people who have good, sane religious values and all of that stuff. But they're still pulling that lever. Is there any hope for them?
There is some hope for them, Rick. I mean, and in 2020 we targeted a group of 3 to 8% of Republicans in these states to swing them over for Biden. We were successful in a number of places to pull that number, 3 to 8% over. We think that this number is expanding rather than contracting because January 6th and the increasing stuff in a lot of suburban areas that drives even moderate Republicans away from the party. Like you've got in Texas, they're snitching on women who get abortions. They're paying people to spy on women who get abortions. And whether or not you agree with abortion at all, you don't need to have people spying on women getting medical procedures. That's not a country you should want to live in. And a lot of voters don't want to live in it. And now you're seeing this cruelty happening in Florida with like the Don't Say Gay bill, where a teacher can be fined and penalized if they don't report a child who tells them they're gay to the parents. Same thing in Texas, where the governor is wants the schools and school counselors and social workers to report trans children. I think that's a thing that's going to continue to drive a wedge between more moderate, socially moderate Republicans and the rest of the party. And you will eventually reach a critical mass where in deep red areas and deep red states, you may be successful, but it's going to be harder and harder to win over votes of educated and suburban and affluent voters, and it's going to trickle down eventually to folks who just don't want to be in a party that's based on cruelty.
I sure hope you're right. I hope there's a way for my Republican voting friends to come back to somewhere near the sane line, because it would sure be nice to be in the same stadium again. I don't believe we'll all be on the same field, but at least in the same arena. But Rick, I appreciate you taking time for us. Great talking
Rick,
with you.
Anytime, brother. Love being on with you. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll talk to you guys again soon.
You as well. Our good friend Rick Wilson. Make sure you check out the work that they do at the Lincoln Project. LincolnProject.us. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. You also follow them at Project Lincoln on Twitter. Good stuff right there. But the scary part in all this, and I gotta go back to the woman yesterday who ran for Senate in Delaware, who came out and honestly said the quiet part out loud.
Here's the deal also, Russia is a Christian nationalist nation. They're actually Orthodox Christian. I'm Russian Orthodox. So, I actually support Putin's right to protect his people and always put his people first, but also protect their Christian values. I identify more with with Putin's Christian values than I do with Joe Biden. So, there is that. There is that there. Christian nationalist countries also are a threat to the global regime, like the Luciferian regime. It wants to mash everything together, but Putin takes care of his people. He looks out for his people. I watched as he deported, they literally walked them through the streets, the criminal illegals who were coming into their country. Yeah. They walked them out and they escorted them out and they said, get out. I can respect that. I can respect that. And I can respect the fact that Putin does everything he can to protect his people.
Yeah, except for the potentially 3,000 soldiers who died in the last 36 hours for his war crime. But she identifies more with Vlad. And what's interesting to me, and again, these are people who talk to me about freedom. They talk about freedom of speech, freedom of they have their guns, except none of that stuff exists over there. And this is where I come back to Tommy Tuberville. I come back to Charlie Weiss. I come back to all these people who, I don't know where their mind is. They are stuck in this mindset that Russia is still a communist country. That we don't want to be like communist or socialism or ist. We know we know something. So you don't want to be that. So that. I mean, how jumbled and insane the messaging. And look, they're all over the map. There's no coordination here. The Fox News people have all of their minions, reading from their hymnal, which is, Joe Biden didn't block the gas. Well, understand, when you're dealing with a coalition of countries that need that energy to keep their houses warm, and when you're talking about people here, that you take that into consideration. And what you target first, your first targets are going after what is going to harm and hurt the wealthy. Hit them first. Make those oligarchs squeal until they turn on Putin. And look, if things are going as badly as it sounds like they are, and I hope Rick is right, I'm hoping that things is going really badly for Putin. There's a moment where, his head could be on the platter as well. Because the wealthy don't like to lose. The wealthy don't like to spend money needlessly. The wealthy don't like to have their lives in any bit of chaos. They want to keep stealing and robbing. And like we talked about yesterday, what's going on, and the sales job that Putin gave, the sales job that he gave was all about, hey, we can go in there, we'll take it over, it'll be a weekend, no problem, and we can rob and pillage. We can have it all. And there's nothing that the world's going to do about it. Except here's the thing. Joe Biden did, and good on Joe Biden. So for all those people beating up on Joe Biden today, as those 13 guys on Snake Island said before the Russian warship killed them all. Blank you. Good on them. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com is where you get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Also, grab the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, from iHeart to iTunes, Stitcher to Podbean, and everywhere in between. You can get it there. Also, love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.